Hi, everyone. We thought we would have a somewhat interesting video while we were waiting for everyone to join in tonight. And so just as a countdown, a little magic for you. So welcome to our parent Q and A. This is a follow-up from our parents' night that we did with Brett back in the end of January. And we had a ton of parents send in questions, which was amazing, but we did not have enough time to get to all of them. So we're doing this follow-up night to give you an opportunity to get your questions answered, to ask new ones. And just to learn a little bit more with Brett. So thank you so much for joining us. In the chat, Brett has already got a couple links in there for you, so take a look at those. And as Brennan said, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable with everyone seeing your question, you are able to directly message Brett so that only he will see your question there. So yeah, as Brett is talking, as people are asking questions, please keep entering them into the chat there. So yeah, if anyone has one that they want to put in real quick, if not, we do have a few that we weren't able to get to last time, and we can start with one of those. Okay.
I see one.
See one, perfect.
Everybody, it's funny, I say it's good to be back. I was with you last time. I'm not back anywhere. It's funny how the language is so shifted now that we're all in our houses. I'm glad to have a chance to be with you guys again. Book recommendations for parents with kids entering teens.
Tweens.
Tweens, oh, I read that. Tell me I don't have my glasses on. First thing I'm gonna give you, what's nice is because I'm not using a presenter mode, I can share some links with you. So the first is, this is all of my favorite books on literally everything I speak on. This is a new thing. I think I had this when I was with you guys. It's a new Amazon thing, which allows me to put, so if you go to the parenting one, my favorite books are in that. Now, what's interesting about tweens is there's not a huge difference these days between the things that tweens are dealing with and things that teens are dealing with. It is very, maybe how we talk to our kids is different, but the issues themselves are not. I'm just looking at my list here. One of my favorites was actually a girl named Karen Gordon. Karen actually is a psychotherapist. I think she's a psychotherapist in Toronto, but she has a book called Dr. Karen's Guide to the Teen Years, and it's in the parent section of that list. It's probably one of my favorites. I read this when my kids weren't teens. They were probably 10 and 9, I think it was. And it probably was one of my favorites. And then I'd probably say Hold On to Your Teens by Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate. Again, it goes back to what we kind of talked about in my parenting talk about how the relationship with your kids is like the quintessential most important thing, right? The better relationship we have, the less discipline. The better relationship we have, the more communication. Better relationship we have, studies talk about all those negative things go down. So the Gabor Mate, Hold On to Your Kids, The Collapse of Parenting, Leonard Sachs. There's a couple new ones that I've read recently. I just added one called Untangled. To this, it's not a faith-based book, and the byline is Guiding Teenage Girls Through the 7 Transitions in Adulthood. And for any parents of daughters, it was really unique. Not a Christian worldview. There's a few conversations that are just different in some ways, a bit of language, but really, really good book. And the one for boys I might suggest is called He's Not Lazy by Adam Prince. Quite good. Okay, Christine Chad, we have 3 kids, 3, 6, and 9. You guys are busy. Based on work schedule, we find ourselves training all the time. Kids will always respond to people differently. It's just trying to find your unique way in how you parent kids. It's not that there's something different. Yeah, there's not I wish there's a perfect answer to that. It's just that, parents are different and kids are different. And so it's looking at how I actually might suggest with something like that is the family meeting conversation we have might be a really great thing, because the family meeting is where you set rules, set things. It doesn't matter what parent, it's setting all those things of how we're going to be, how we're going to act, how we're going to live as a family. I do have a YouTube video on that. It was one of, for my wife and I, one of the best things having this idea of a family meeting. I don't think I went through that a lot with you guys. Let me just take 2 minutes on that. When I did a program called the Air Leadership Program, Carson Pugh, who ran it, challenged us to have these yearly AGMs, annual general family meetings, to which I thought, it's the dumbest thing ever. Like, I'm like, why would anyone want to do that? So my kids were, if I'm correct, 9 and 8 or 8 and 7 when we had our first one. And we got to the meeting, we put an agenda on the fridge. It said agenda. We got to the day of the meeting and there was nothing on it. And we realized that I don't think we ever told the kids what an agenda even is. We put a big word on the fridge. And so we got to our family meeting and we talked about all the different things that, we're going to be as a family and what does it mean, and, how we're going to do these things. We're going to be a Christian family. Our church had 2 church services. Which ones are we going to go to? Do they need new shoes? I mean, for Christine with kids 3, 6, and 9, they're growing out of everything all the time. I mean, every summer's coming. Do they have bikes? Do they have cleats for soccer? Like, it just never ends. And then we said, anywhere in the world you want to go for dinner, we'll go. And we went to, as someone would guess, McDonald's. And we're finishing McDonald's. And I said to my wife, this is the dumbest thing we've ever, let's just not do it again. And she said, no, let's do it one more year. And so the next year we explained what an agenda was. We put the agenda on the fridge and we got to the day of our family meeting in late August. And it was filled, like top to bottom, with things sideways filled. Number one, they wanted a baby brother or sister, which was an interesting conversation. And even talk about teaching moments. I just had a vasectomy, very close to that. So my kids were the only 8 and 7-year-olds probably in North America who understood what that was. But and then number 2 was they want a dog. And my son said, I'll give up our vacation to have a dog. And my son, I mean, he's young. These kids were like under 10. And we're realizing, like, these were good conversations. And we voted on things for years, vacations, what we're going to do. And then, we kind of moved from McDonald's to, I think it's the one time a year we take all their gift certificates for the keg and go and have a nice meal. But it, for us, has been the foundation of our parenting, because we are together, we celebrate, we've walked through things. So there's no unwritten rules. The way my kids will act with my wife or me should be the same within that. Even though, to go back to Christine's question, there are always unique things, right? There are things, and they might need to be dealt with, but there are unique ways that we each have to figure out how to connect with our kids. Anyone else have something they want to? Sorry, I was looking at something else. And if not, Emily, why don't I do one of the questions that we had come in? So these were questions that we didn't get to when I was with you guys. Okay. Sorry, I just opened another app there. Don't know why that happened. Okay, pre-COVID, we were very good at putting our phones away, computers away, and being intentional with our kids while we were home as a family. Great. Now we have to work, 2 work from home parents with 3 kids at home 100% of the time. I think of the word chaos, and most of us who are home all the time know that. Now, each of us are unique in this. My wife and I are so fortunate. We have a first-year university daughter. So my daughter's always home from Western for a few days, but she heads back on the train tomorrow. So it's not the same. And I have a grade 12 son. And so the level of, I see, well, Christine posted, she's 3, 6, and 9. The difference between parents with young kids at home and my wife and I, where my son drives himself to high school every second day, is very different. And so for some of you where it is really busy like that, first off, I just say grace and mercy to us. And I don't say that as a joke. I mean, literally, give yourself some grace and mercy. Give your kids grace and mercy. Give our teachers grace and mercy. I was watching a YouTube fail the other day. It was a grade 3 class, and the teacher got bumped off, and there was like 25 grade 3 kids, and it was showing their conversations. Like, this is just the world we're living in. So first off, grace and mercy. Number two, this is survival. So the goal right now is survival. Like, we need to get through. And there's certain seasons. I'm really glad March is tomorrow. This winter season to me is this first one to get through, because once we hit April, and the weather looks really great actually for March, but we can start being outside more. And there's just something about that. Seasonal affective disorder will hopefully go away. Our kids can sports and other things, but we got to get through this. And so first off, we have to get through our day. And so when our kids are up at 8 o'clock, if they're in high school, a lot of it's what's it called? Asymptomatic. Like, you don't even need to go at the certain times. It's just your work is posted. And even if your kids are in school, they're home all the time. And so there are, well, if you're at home with 2 people working, which this one says, people have had to kind of make some strategies. So one of my friends, he works all morning. So literally in a room, and it's like the kids know they're not allowed in there. He works like full attention, 3 to 4 hours. At lunch, they have lunch together, then they flip for the afternoon. So one, you get full attention of your job for the morning and partial attention for the afternoon, because you're kind of watching the kids. I know some other friends who are actually working at night. And so they're both around doing a little bit throughout the day. And then one works from 3 till 6, one works from 6 till 10. This is not sustainable. It's not a lifestyle we want, but for them, it means they can give full attention to their kids. They have really young kids, and there's some learning disabilities as well. Now, we're online more. Yes. And so I use the rocks analogy. I think I used that in the talk where I gave you guys. So the rocks analogy is big rocks, little rocks, pebbles. And so as long as our kids are doing the big rocks, I'm not worried that we're spending more time online playing Minecraft, doing the things that kids are doing today. So big rocks, school, like they're working hard at school, they're doing okay at school, daily exercise. In my mental health talk, I talk about body, mind, and soul. This is, to me, every day we each have to do this. And so at the beginning of COVID, we talked about this quite a lot as a family every day. What are you doing for your body? What are you doing for your mind and your soul? So I walk every day. My gym actually opened. So I actually went to the gym today, which was just stellar. It has been a long time. But school, gym, exercise, reading. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but in my house, we've actually been paying our kids to read when they hit grade 9. Reading, I heard this from John Maxwell. John Maxwell, some of you might know, is a leadership guru, but kids don't want to read. Kids are in school full time, and they like just to say, here's a great book. They don't want to do it, but to pay them $20 for it, as John Maxwell said, my dad paid me to read 100 books through my upbringing, and the learning it gave me made him who it was. And so the first book we had our kids read is this one. It's called The Ripple Effect: Sleep, Eat, Move, Think. Like, it's just these foundations. And this is in on the book, the Amazon, you find this under mental health. But I want my kids to just sleep well. And why is sleep important? What does healthy eating mean? We joined a gym as a family when we were in grade 9. But reading, family meals, face-to-face contact, and make sure your kids are doing this. I know too many parents who don't let their kids are just not even leaving the house. Like, whether your kids, like, depending on your age, you go for walks with some other people. You can meet at a park still. We've been hiking with my sister and her family. Now, at times you weren't allowed more than, I think it was 4 people. So we're 2 families of 4. So we went and then walked 500 meters apart. But like, you can do this, right? I just see too many kids who, one of my daughter's best friends didn't leave the house for 3 months. And it's like, bring her an iced coffee and sit on her porch. There's things that we can do. And then part-time jobs if they have them. My son works part-time job, sports activities and chores, but those are the big rocks. So if kids are doing all those things, then the pebbles go in. The pebbles actually might be chores. It might be shopping for us or other things. And then the sand is social media, playing online and different things. But as long, for me, and this is why in my house, we've never had, some parents would say an hour of screens per night during the week and 2 hours on weekends. We've never had that. And this is just in our house. We've just said, as long as you're doing well in school, you go to youth group, you go to church with us, you're eating healthy, you're exercising, as long as you're doing those things, what you do with your spare time, I don't care. Kind of like if this was a Sunday a month and a half ago, I'd be watching football for 3 hours on a Sunday because I like to watch football. But if my son plays 3 hours of whatever sports game on his PS4 he's playing, it's just what we value. Also, I would encourage with the technology bit, have your kids take some ownership over this, meaning it's teaching them why it's important to have time away from screens, not just telling them. And this is part of the progression of parenting from little kids through high school kids. Have them take ownership. If they have an iProduct, iPhone, iPad, it will actually tell you how much screen time you get, and you can make the family accounts. And we began talking about this as a family, why it's important to have time away. We talked about with homework, how you shouldn't have your phone leaned up against your, I don't know, in your area, in our area, all the kids get Chromebooks in high school. Is that the same for you guys? So, okay. But like almost everyone puts their Chromebook out and a phone out, and like literally you're doing homework and it's dinging and back and forth. And so we explained it takes you 3 hours to do 1 hour of homework if you do that. And my kids began to go, oh, like airplane mode, like teaching them how to do it. And there will come a time when we'll have to pull back on tech. And I don't think we're there yet. I think we're still in survival mode. And so I'm not worried as long as the other things are being done right now. One thing that does worry me, there's a Lego thing that I saw. It talks about the average time a kid spends online is 917 minutes. Is it a month? I think it's a week. 917 minutes a week. But the average time we talk to kids about digital safety and how to act online is 46 minutes in their entire lifetime, which is a disconnect, right? These need to be questions we're having with kids from when they're really, really young. And it's a never ending, this is where family dinners, family meals, all these other things will work together. Some other questions. How do you navigate the world of Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon with teens? I have a really great thing for that. I just have to find it. Here we go. This came to me recently, and I think this is probably the best. Everyone, this whizcase.com. This actually gives you the guide to parental controls. And this is not just for what they said here about Netflix, Disney. This one actually goes through Netflix, Hulu, all those, all your PlayStations, Nintendos, your streams, all that stuff. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Twitch, Reddit, all the products, Apple, Android, Windows, Chromebook, all the TV things, Roku, Apple, Fire Stick, Samsung, and all of the browsers. And it actually gives you, if your kids have a phone, how to make sure pornography and other things are not going to come on. And you can also set, I know like if you have Disney Plus, which we've been watching WandaVision, which is phenomenal as a side note, completely lost train of thought there. Last week, Star, if on Amazon, like sorry, on Disney of all like Pixar, Marvel, Star came on, but right away it asked us, do we want to set it for all the movies that are 14 plus to be blocked? So you can do that. You can make sure like mature movies and stuff are just not even visible, because there is some tough stuff on that. But what our kids often don't realize that in the account, you can watch, like in Netflix, if you go to your account, you can see everything that's been viewed. But again, there's two sides to this coin. One is teaching our kids and talking to our kids about these things, and one is filtering and other things. One day your kids, as they're like, teens are 13. My daughter's 18, turning 19 in a few days. Like, she's back at Western tomorrow. There's no filters on residence, internet, and things. So it's helping prepare her and making good choices of what they're going to watch on these shows as well. I'm just going to go, wow, lots of great questions right away. Did you ever have a child that struggled to control anger, disappointment, self-regulation? I think all kids struggle with that a little bit. This is not the book, but I would suggest this book. It's actually a Kindle. I buy a lot of Kindle books, but this is The Explosive Child by Ross Greene. This to me is, I think, for discipline. I wish I had read this before I wrote my book, because I have a chapter on discipline, but he talks over and over again about if there's issues happening, it's because kids don't have the knowledge of how to walk through them on their own. And so there's these counseling sessions trying to explain to parents and teach us, if something's happening, how do we give kids that understanding to be successful? And I really, really thought that was great. Because if they're struggling to control, there's an emotional regulation issue, there's another issue. So the question is that's not good, but how do we fix that? How do we help them walk through that? Christine, good questions. You're free to ask as many as you want. Sorry for my questions. What about school-age children that make new friends and want to play dates? Post-COVID, I guess. Must be the parents before, or only allow the friend to come to your house. That's a really good question. And I think it changes as your kids get older. Like, if my son goes out with someone tonight, my son's in grade 12, I'm not calling his parents. Like, talk about an embarrassing thing for a kid with that. But when your kids are younger, we always wanted to meet the parents. But even just meeting the parents, I mean, you teach your kids how to act in all situations and what is right and wrong, and how to get out if it's a situation they shouldn't be in. Because even meeting someone, you don't know, like, we don't know what people are like in a 5-minute meeting. I think play dates are great, though. I know some parents, we get worried about all those things. I do think statistics show that we are a more fear-based culture, but the statistics of kids getting hurt and abused, it's usually not play dates with someone we don't know. Too much of the abuse actually is with people we do know. I had a question privately about sexual identity and orientation. I'm just honest with this, is in that this is not my wheelhouse. It is a humongous conversation, and one that I am beginning to read in. But the one thing that I've tried to do in my life and in the ministry that I do is to do what I do well. And so I'm not an expert on everything. I was asked, remember Michael Corn? Remember that TV show many years ago? I was asked to be on his show, and I thought, oh, what a great opportunity. And I said, okay. So I called his producer, who's also named Michael, and he said, okay, you're going to be the Christian, like, it's this round table of politics and stuff. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're the Christian. There's a Jewish rabbi, a Catholic priest, an Islamic imam, and then someone else, I think it was Hindu or something else. And he says, and you're the Christian person. I said, well, what are we talking about? And he said, well, politics and apologetics and all these other things. And I said, I really appreciate the offer, but that's not me. I am not, like, you look at the apologetics people, the Tim Barnetts and the people who travel, Josh Gilman and all these other people, a lot of the people who were with the Ravi Zacharias organization, they're youth people who traveled and speak. Those are the people who do that kind of stuff. And just that topic for me is not my wheelhouse, but it's one that we need to walk through and talk about for sure. Did I miss any on that list?
There was just a follow-up about navigating social media in terms of limits, not just the Netflix and like the streaming services, but social media, and like, how much freedom do you give kids?
So when my kids were young, most kids I find get don't get up. No, I mean, I knew someone recently who gave his kid a iPhone 11 in kindergarten with a full internet package. And the dad said, "Am I an idiot?" And I'm like, "Can I say, like, I'm like, are you asking me to call you an idiot?" Like, I just, why would you buy an internet package for a kid? There was no filters on it. There was nothing. Kids will be on products. Like, I mean, I see the difference with me is my kids are a bit older. So my daughter was in grade 1 when the iPhone came out. Some of your kids right now will be on Apple products before they even head into school. They'll be on a tablet or something playing games. And there's great educational games and different things. My kids bought, they had a paper route beginning in grade 4, and they bought an iPad on their own in grade 4. But I had phones and they'd been on things when they were younger. When they're younger, everything they do is filtered by us as adults, right? The internet in my home is filtered from my router. I'm pointing to it, you can't see it. Like, but my Rogers router, I run OpenDNS. OpenDNS.com is actually the website. And OpenDNS.com, write it down for you so you have it. OpenDNS.com is something that, because it's router driven, it blocks almost all pornography coming into your home. So it's not like you have to worry about it going to your PS4, or for your lucky ones, PS5, Xbox, whatever else you have. It blocks it to everything. And as your kids get older, I mean, they're pre-COVID, and even last summer, sometimes there'd be 15 people in my house, like outside, inside. You can't just be blocking everybody, but if it's blocked from your router, it's blocked. As your kids get a bit older, they begin to go on social media. And that's usually the first thing where people are asking, well, what do you do? And so if your kids go on, and it will usually be Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok is what we're looking at today. TikTok is just Musical.ly. For those of you who knew Musical.ly from before, they just kind of rebranded it. But when my kids went on Instagram, it was around middle school, and they had to add me and my wife as their friend. And again, the biggest thing we were doing was teaching our kids what it's like to be online. Now, my daughter went through, and my son, unlike some of us, if you go to my Instagram, I think I have 2,500 photos or something. Like, I don't ever pull anything off. My kids only had for many years 6 photos. They curate and choose a handful of things. If it doesn't get attention, they would pull it off. Your kids will grow out of that by the time, your girls first usually, and then your boys kind of late high school, usually, not always. But again, there's this progression. So think of, I'm not strangling a kid. It's kind of like your hands are on their shoulders, like kind of like they're riding a bike. And then so when they're little, you're right there. We even curate music lists when they're little, right? It's not just they head on Apple Music or Spotify. You curate what they do. We give them YouTube, which is curated or for children. And then at some point we start releasing a little bit, teaching. We were teaching my kids how to search online. If they, in grade 4, when I think I said this in the media talk, probably a couple of years ago when I did that for you guys, but in grade 4, we flipped in our house. So it wasn't my son or daughter coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to buy a song. Like, can I have Rihanna, or can I have whoever?" And then we would search it and then tell them yes or no. We ended up flipping it around and saying, "Well, here's the computer," And so the idea was, we're a Christian home. If you're going to bring something into our Christian home, you tell us why it should come into our home. Now, it meant teaching kids how to search, walking through like language. I remember once my daughter and I were Googling a song, and she's like, "What is that word?" And I'm like, "It's a slang term for a woman's breast." And I said, "Do you still want the song?" And she's like, "No." But like, I remember kind of looking at her like, she said no, not I said, "Honey, you can't have that." My daughter said, I don't want that in my life. Then your kids get even a bit older. And again, we release more and more. And this is the debate. I mean, I've been on panels and we have differing things. I did not have software that reads my kids' messages and stuff in high school. I want to have a good relationship with them and trust them. So unless they broke that, I wasn't reading through every message. Now, when kids were a bit younger, I wish I had, there's a new thing called Bark. Bark, I think it's bark.us. So Bark is a very interesting platform in that it actually has, I'm going to say AI built into it, but here's what it means. If you have a grade 7 daughter, son, and they are texting, like they're on social media and someone starts writing them, and think of any string of text that's inappropriate. Show me your whatever. If someone writes that, the AI sees it and then sends you a message as a parent. And I think it's really interesting. I think it's a very smart thing. And it even talks about, school shootings prevented and self-harm detected. So I don't completely, I've used it off and on for a bit. And you can also use Disney. Do I have mine around? Disney Square Circle. It's called Disney Circle, but it's a square. And you attach this to your router, but it allows you to take, so for, sorry to say Christine again, I know your age, your kids, 3, 6, and 9. If your 3-year-old and your 9-year-old hop on something, there may be different privileges for that. And so this lets you say, for if your kid has an iPad, you can only see this, 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 and this, or you get 2 hours a day, or you can actually turn off the internet and it's completely gone. But it's quite a good package. But the idea is just slowly release your kids. Again, remember, like the main quote for this talk was, "They will not be with me forever, so I will prepare them accordingly." Like it's funny, my little girl is almost 19 and she's at Western, and university's rough. I mean, what goes on in residence and other places is tough. It's the same at all the places near you, Waterloo and Guelph and other ones, but in Laurier, I guess. But their kids can survive that and do well. But it's because we've talked about alcohol, we've talked about drugs, we've talked about sex, we've talked about relationships and all these other things. And so the goal is to prepare for that.
Brett, can I just add something about Bark?
Yeah.
I'm a part of their Facebook group. They're the group called Parenting in a Tech World, that they technically kind of oversee on Facebook, but there's over 100,000 parents in the group. And then people like me who are not a parent, but work with teens. And it's a really great Facebook group. I've learned a lot from just the questions that parents ask, and then as other parents try to answer and give ideas and support each other. So I would recommend that group to anyone. So Parenting in a Tech World is what it's called.
It looks like a little image of I don't even know, to be honest, like an artwork of some sort.
Yeah, it's got like a backpack, I think, and like a water bottle, and like kind of like a cartoon with like a blue background.
Something else I think that is important with media is it is changing so often. Like, even for those of us who work in, whether it's Kidsman, junior high, senior high, we do this for a living. It's always changing. There's always new things. So there are a few sites that I use to keep current and to get information. Parent Q is a wonderful podcast. I just think, like, I went through these in the talk, but I think that's a great one. And cpyu.org for media is probably my favorite. And so one of the things I encourage parents to do is like, even as Emily said that, I quickly went and joined that Parenting in a Tech World group. Like, anytime I hear of good things, I want to connect with it or find that book or different things. But like CPYU, get their weekly email. And not only will they tell you, like, here's the biggest things being searched on Twitter or on YouTube or the top charts for music, but there'll be articles from Time Magazine and Huffington Post and just these great articles on stuff. Now, depending on your kids, you might read through the few and go, whatever, delete. Or you might be going through and it might be talking about the growth of self-harm in high school today, a thing we talked about for a while and are talking less about. And you might go, oh, this is interesting me, because you might find one of your kids struggles with that. And anyways, I think this is really, they're just some good things. And the third one I might do is actually called Axis, axis.org. And they're the teen culture translator, which I always find funny, but it's really true. I don't remember if I told the story when I was with you, but for the new book that I wrote, one of the chapters was on drugs and alcohol, which is not something that I speak on. And so I read 35 books, I think, over a number of months. And one day over dinner, I was just trying to ask my kids like about smoking. And I said to my kids, well, no one smokes anymore, right? And they're like, everyone smokes, almost everyone. And I'm like, no one smokes. And then my daughter was like, no, what do you think smoking is? And I said, cigarettes. And she laughed and went, no, no one smokes that. I'm talking about weed. And I'm kind of like, even someone who researches teen culture, I did not grasp the change in language that kids had. So picture you're talking about smoking at your kitchen table and you're talking about cigarettes and they're talking about like marijuana. And it's like, we need to have the same language. So this Access one sends, this is free, sends you 3 things a week, changing teen speak to adult speak. The one I had a number of years ago that was really funny. I'm speaking at a church in Winnipeg. I was there for an entire weekend. And when I finished, so it was like Friday night, Saturday, Sunday night, pastor said, it's been a great weekend. He said, I just can't wait to go home and Netflix and chill, to the large audience. And I mean, the teens began to laugh, and then the young adults, and then he thought, man, he's on. And so he says a few more things and begins to pray. And the associate pastor leans over and says, what does that mean? And I said, it actually means to go home and like put on Netflix, but have sex. And you watch the blood drain from his face. And he went over and interrupted the pastor praying, to which the pastor, I could watch the blood drain from his face. But like, don't use language we don't know what it means. But it's important to know what language means. And it's important to know with Netflix and chill, it's actually changing, right? Terminology shifts. It's kind of like an app like Tinder. Tinder began as a hookup app, and Tinder's now becoming a mainstream dating app. And it's no different. Many people talk about Snapchat, how people used to send provocative photos in it, which they still might, but it's now the #1 communication tool that probably every high school and junior high kid, you guys know. That's, you know, my kids will have from like Camp Minneola where they go. And then my son's a lifeguard. This is his group in high school. And my son was a rep baseball player and church youth group and everything else. But it's good for you to know, to have conversations with your kids.
All right, there are 2 questions right now in the chat. And then do we want to do those and then try to quickly answer the few that were asked at the parents' night?
For sure.
So the first there, what are some great activities that we can do at home?
What's interesting, I don't know, Vanessa, the age of your kids. I think cooking is something we all should be doing. I mean, in our house, and we have teams, we did who could make, again, March, April was the most interesting season of life, wasn't it? When we were all home, the first kind of wave, it was novel. We didn't know what was happening. We were playing games like board games. My kids love Settlers of Catan. Settlers is probably the best game I've ever played. My kids learned it when they were like 9 and 10. So don't think that kids can't learn it when they're young. If you buy the game, you then have to buy Cities and Nights, and it's an expansion pack, which will mean nothing to you right now, but it will. If you do have an iPad, you can download Catan and play it on your iPad just to see what the game it is. But there's something about board games. Again, you're building a relationship with your kids. There's something about, you're all lying on the floor around a kitchen table and you're chatting, and like you probably find you're playing, and then suddenly conversation heads off in different things. Monopoly, Risk, which goes on forever. If your kids were younger, I mean, my wife actually did this during the first lockdown. She did like Ullman Olympics, she called it, and like she made games in our house, and we were putting into glasses, and she bought some balloons. Like, you know, you think of going to the dollar store, there's family activities you can do. I would encourage everyone as a family to walk every night. If you have young kids, just walk. Like, I heard this once, a father just said, we don't know what to do, and we're just walking around the block after dinner. And I'm like, what a great, simple idea. And in the spring, if your kids are young again, you go for bike rides. As your kids get older, you might not find you as a family go for family bike rides anymore. And that's okay. I miss that. But my son and I now go for 50K bikes. Like, we go for a 3-hour bike. And depending on your kids and what they like, that might be something that, you know, when you have a certain relationship with one of your kids, you do. Reading together. I mean, I know families who've read through like the Narnia series and then Lord of the Rings, like just you can read together as a family. I mean, even playing video games, like, I mean, I any day would just love to put on like an original Nintendo with like the first like Mario Brothers games. Like there's things that have nostalgia and they're fun to do. But the truth is, um, there's no wrong or right, and you know what your kids are like and what they need. There was a family that I know that decided to go give iced coffees and donuts. Where was this? It was Canada, because it was actually Tim Hortons. But they actually just went in their community to all their friends' families and brought them iced coffees and donuts. And they did one a week, all March, April, May, June. And I just thought, yeah, it cost them, I think it was 15, $20 a week or something. But I'm like, what exciting. And they'd show up and they'd have balloons outside and anything gets a smile these days. In the winter, hiking. I know our family's begun to be hikers, like find the conservation areas and things that are near you. This summer, which you guys could drive in for, we came from the other side, but we went to Hamilton and did all of the, well, not all, but we did a bunch of the waterfalls for the day. But it's a great question. The truth is there's no right and wrong. And I think the truth is it's just that you're doing something together. I forget what we tried to do during the lockdown. We went somewhere and it was closed, and went somewhere else and it was closed. And we tried to go for dinner and we could. It was just one of those nights. It ended up being one of these really fun things because it didn't really matter what we were doing. We were together, and we won't never forget all the places that got closed. And I would suggest, as your family, your kids get older, going to a gym together is a really good thing. It models good, healthy habits, but there's also something about taking an evening, like if you work all day and you come home, and the idea of heading to the gym for a few hours is tough. But if you all go together, it adds, there's just, I love when I'm at the gym, I look over, there's my daughter working out and there's my son working out and my wife and I are doing different things. There's just something exciting about that. And Christine wrote, obstacle courses. Yeah. Seeing to be the fastest. I think the spring will have a lot of changes for us coming back, which is quite good. A couple other questions that came in before. Thank you so much. How do we navigate? I think it's the same kind of a work question that parents are having to work, and their kids are all around. You might need to have a dedicated space for people to work. We're lucky, my daughter's back at school, so my wife ends up taking my daughter's room. But you can't have 3 people at the kitchen table when you're trying to make business calls. It just doesn't work. And so whether someone goes in the basement, and I've heard people with rules, if the door has a big red poster board on it, you can't come in. It means mom or dad, or if you're a single parent, like that person is working for that moment. Do not disturb. Yeah. My daughter was baptized, heavily influenced by society. How do we help her build a strong Christian value for life? When your kid hits university, I mean, the reality is that, remember the marbles analogy we talked about? Like you're pulling the marble out. The marbles are done. You're now building marbles back in. And so your kid is actually an adult. I would encourage you probably to get, I did write that in here. It's a book by Jim Burns, Doing Life with Your Adult Children. And now that sounds like you're doing life with a 25, 35-year-old. This is just, I mean, as your kids get older, we're the friendship stage. So you can model good Christian life. You can encourage them. I mean, for my daughter at university, we've been encouraging her to take part in like InterVarsity. What's the other one? Power to Change. Like, you know, there's these groups that are on campus. I really wish that we had all, like, my kids are camp kids as well. I wish like we knew every camp kid who went to every university, whether it's Laurier or Mac or whatever else, where we could have a great place where kids all meet. But to answer that question, they're adults at that point. And so the book talks about how we have to change the way we're doing things. We're still parents, and they may still be in our houses, but the relationship has to shift a bit. And so keep modeling good things. And this is a hard one. But sometimes, I had this with a friend of ours, and they were attending. Now, you have a larger church. She was at a very small church. She was the only young adult. And the parent was real upset. The daughter doesn't want to go to church anymore. And I said, she's 21 and she's the only 21-year-old. And I forget what community it was, but there were a few other local places that had some large young adult groups. And I'm like, we all love Jesus, whether you go to my church or your church. It's not about, right? It's about growing our kids' faith. And so I encourage this lady to have her kid try all the young adults groups in her community. And she found one that she loved. She found a group that was her group and she found her people, if you want to say that. And that's a good thing, right? And so it might mean encouraging them at university to, like, especially if this girl's still in university, get plugged in with the InterVarsity or the Power to Change. I know Power to Change we pushed with my daughter because they do humanitarian trips, which got canceled last year, but which is something my wife and I just loved when we were younger. And so what a great opportunity to go to Guatemala, Belize, or somewhere else and do great work. I'm going to quickly blast through these to make sure we get them. And if we have any more questions, we'll go through it. During COVID lockdown, how do we give our teens space to grow and be challenged and obtain new social experiences? Oh, that's a good question. First off, I would say I love the heart of that because you're looking at growing our kids. So I think I'd like the heart behind the question. This is the hard thing, is there's not much happening. It's kind of why right now there's actually, I'm going to go off on a bigger tangent if I go through that. I was just going to say, kids are doing surprisingly well during quarantine. And the statistics are showing that because there's more time with parents, they're sleeping more. There's actually less social media, even though there's more TikTok and Instagram reels, but there's nothing happening. There's nothing happening. Like, adults are debating and angry on every social media, but there's not much happening for kids. And so how do you give them space to grow? Maybe finding what their likes are. I know many kids who've taken up hobbies. My son's actually been playing guitar more. So looking at what they might need. Again, this might go back to the family meeting of what are you looking at doing? How to be challenged. Maybe challenge your kids to read a book, find a book. The second book my kids read, or the most recent one, was called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Probably my favorite book of last year, and one that talks about, because it's the habits of exercise, but also the habits of faith is what I want them to think of other things. And obtain new social experiences. That's the tough one right now, because high school kids are not getting that. But we can encourage our kids to have as much face-to-face contact as they can. And so, I know some kids who've gotten part-time jobs in high school just so they're at a grocery store, they're at McDonald's, and they're with peers. And so I'm good with that. I'm even out. So we're in red. Are you guys in red? Yeah. I heard a few places are going back to gray tomorrow, but we're allowed 5 people in our house again. And so my son has had a few friends over each night. We're careful with what we do. Kids distance, and they go in our basement. They actually play pool on our huge pool table. But I'm happy with that. Anything that gets more face-to-face contact is good. I'm so looking forward to the next few months as weather gets better, so they're outside. Question about video games that becomes a pattern is set. How do we address the pattern? Again, I wouldn't worry about that yet. It's okay. The truth is, especially for boys' mental health, playing lots of video games is not decreasing. It's actually okay. This is where boys chat and talk to each other. Yeah, I don't think having 5-6 hours a day of games is great, but we'll deal with that later. Because what else do you do? It's not like we can say, let's go to the mall, let's go out to eat. There's some things we're able to start doing, but there's not much you can do with that. Mary said, doing your life with adult children's at the library. Yeah, use the public library. There's some great books there. The other question is an interesting one. What advice can you give to parents of kids with big age gaps? My wife and I, our kids were very close together. It took us a long time for my wife to get pregnant with my daughter, and we thought it would be the same, and she was pregnant almost immediately. Their kids are 17 or 18 months apart, but my kids are one grade apart. But my niece and nephew, she's in second university and he's in grade 8. And so all I ever think with that is make sure you give the same experiences you did for your older kid to your younger kid. Like it might mean redoing Disney, it might mean redoing the zoos, but it's not like we did it with the older kid, we're not going to do them. And I actually like the language of experiences. And we talk about that a lot in my home. Like, what experiences do we want to give our kids? Like, one was getting a dog, and we love our dog. Like, we have an English bulldog. She sleeps almost all day. But it's the idea of having a dog and having that. And even just experiences. We don't give Christmas gifts anymore. We now do experiences. And so we went owl rafting last year in Ottawa. But the experience is family time. It's fun. We play together. And I think it's incredibly protective for the family that they know we are loved, like we love them and we are a family. And like, no matter where my kids go to school, my son's going to probably go to Queens next year. They're 2 hours in either direction. I was hoping Laurier, like somewhere where it's close, but that's okay. But the idea of they know they can go away, but they will always have this place to come back to me is something that's really, really important. I find with Q and A, I end up talking a lot about a whole bunch of different things. If there's anything that anyone else wants to add, please quickly do. But you can all find me online. I did write a lot of these questions are answered in my parenting book, which is really a handbook. We are just, my wife and I are just working on the book study for this, where you could sit down with other parents and go through it together. Emily does have a number of these at your church. And if you were interested, you can buy it on my website. The truth is you can just e-transfer me too, but you just buy what's called porch pickup. So there's no shipping fees. And then you can make sure you just contact Emily and get it from your church. But the book is all of those topics that you need to address. The real goal, it was about a 3-year project, was to make one resource for parents where you can get not only the 6 chapters on parenting, which is the talk I did for you guys, but the mental health, family discipleship, media, how do we engage the world, all these other things. There's a topic on sexuality, pornography, and dating as well. And I think I saw a question on dating. Did I miss that?
There is a question there. And then there's a follow or another question. There's 2 there in the chat.
If you see it, just read it. I don't see the dating one. Did I miss it?
It says, can you talk a little bit more about dating? Did you allow your kids to have solo time with boys or girls in high school, or were they to be in groups? So just to elaborate a little bit about your views on dating.
Sure. If you just go on YouTube, I'm already on YouTube. I have a talk online called Dating for Life, and it is my second talk on dating. Both of my talks for dating are actually on YouTube. Sorry. It is my main conversation on dating. There is a chapter in that in the book as well. So the rule we did in our house was my kids were not allowed to date until they were 16. Now, my son is a November baby, so he's young. My daughter is a March baby. She's older. And the truth is, I wish I'd said grade 12, but we need to protect our kids. Like, there is a dysfunctional dating. Like, kids begin dating in grade 1. Kids are talking about dating. It's like, you're not dating. Like, it's so dysfunctional. Junior high dating is kind of funny. There's a lot of tears and heartbreak that's so unnecessary. But also, if one of the things we talked about was being flexible. Remember the picket fence, the white picket fence, and like the flexibility and negotiated. My son was up at camp and he's 15 and he's not 16 till November. And suddenly my daughter said, Ben wants to have a family meeting. So suddenly there's an iPhone out, it's on speakerphone, and he says, I want to give you my 5 points why I think I should be able to date, and I'm not 16. And we let him. My son, as a teen, could have just done it and not told us, but he didn't. He really liked the worship leader, and she was in Oakville, and they traveled back and forth for a while, and of course they split up. But the idea of being alone, I think it's not healthy ever to be alone, but it's not, again, it's teaching kids how to date. Why is it not good to be alone? Not, we're just going to make sure you're not alone. There's one is teaching kids about that, and then one is actually explaining why you might not want to be alone on a couch in the basement with no one home. Like, so it's teaching and walking through that. But my dating for life has it walks through the questions: when should you date? Are you ready to date? What is dating? And dating today is different. The greater world around us, dating, you actually may sleep with someone. It's not uncommon to have sex with someone and then decide if you want to date later. This is why we have to talk about dating. And the world today is incredibly sexualized. And whether, as I say to my kids, it's not a Christian thing or not, but when people get sexually active, your brain tells you you're in love with someone, even if you shouldn't be. So there's reasons why we have to address dating and sex and all these other conversations. But I do have 90 questions to ask while you're dating. It's a blog. It's actually, if you go to mybrettallman.com, it's one of the whatever featured things that will slide by, but there's 90 questions that kids should ask and talk about while they're dating.
All right. And then I think this will be our last question for the night. We do want to respect everyone's time and not keep you too long. There's a question here with a 12-year-old daughter who doesn't want to do much with mom, just friends. Is there any suggestions that you have to help improve their relationship?
Yeah, I would read the book Untangled. Untangled. It sounds like, I think there's a Disney movie with that. It's on the Amazon thing, Inside Parenting. It's like the third one. I just finished reading it and put it in. This often happens as junior hires begin to differentiate from their parents. And so it's just this in separating, they think they need to separate from you. And this is a thing that happens. Many of us who had junior hires see this for a little bit, and then it changes. But I mean, you always have to make sure that there's a good relationship. There was nothing that fractured the relationship, that you're doing things as a family and having fun and you're having family dinners. And as I talked about in the communication, if there's something that happened, you could have counseling. I don't know. I'm just giving lots. There could be so many situations for any of us here. But there is a differentiation that happens with kids as they start getting older. And the Untangled book actually talks about that being one of these markers that as kids kind of separate from you. I think the story the mom gave, she took their daughter for counseling, saying, like, my daughter's, won't talk to me anymore. But the daughter's teachers, she's doing well in school. Her youth pastor loves her. Or is it youth pastor? Like, there's all these things she's doing well in. It's just this differentiation in the home of separating from mom or dad. That's a good question. I know we're going to finish, Emily. I was just going to say, please let me know. Like, I love Home Depot. You can do it. We can help. You have children's pastors, junior high pastors on, and high school pastors here. Like, please use people like them, right? People like me. Like, we're here to help you. I mean, that's kind of what roles are in churches. And that's why we do nights like this. But please make sure if you have other questions, you contact them and you write people like me and others as well, because to me, that's how we get better, right? We talk about these things. And so if there's questions, please just let me know.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, so much for spending another night with us and for answering those questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. As Brett said, we're here for you ongoing. This is not just a one-time thing. And so please reach out if you have questions or any, you just want to talk about your kids, and we're certainly here for you and want to support you. Yeah, Brett, hopefully you guys have a chance to click on some of those links, copy and paste them into web browsers so that you can take a look at some of the books that Brett recommended or are able to purchase Brett's book. we did record this tonight, just as an FYI. Probably should have said that at the beginning. We will be posting this so that if you wanted to go back and watch anything again later or to send it to a friend, you'll be able to do that. We'll let you know. I think we'll probably put it up on Creekside YouTube channel. So thank you everyone for spending another evening with us. We hope that you have a great week. For those of you who have students in youth ministry, it's an online week this week. And so hopefully we'll see your kids on Zoom later this week. So that's it. So thank you. We'll let you guys
Thanks,
go.
everybody. We all do the waves at the end. We're all used to that, aren't we?